Why, hello, how are you? And welcome to the latest and always greatest edition of Six Rings and Football Things, a New England Patriot-centric football podcast hosted by your old pal, Nick Fitzy Stevens, joined today by the fabulous, wonderful, and talented Miss Megan Ottolini. On today's program, we are going to address one of the many elephants that have decided to take up residence in the room that is Gillette Stadium over the past year plus. The receiver room, the wide receiver conundrum, the X's and Y's. How come they can't hit on all the O's and catch all of the throws? The Patriots have a significant receiver problem. And unfortunately, in the last couple of days, they learned that a possible number one priority offseason free agent target, T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals, will likely not be uncoupling from the Natty anytime soon, as they're once again going to place the franchise tag on him, as was reported by the Cincinnati Sports Illustrated blog. Therefore, now the Patriots will need a new number one wide receiver offseason target. But as Mego explored in a fresh new piece at weei.com, perhaps the answer is in-house or could be coming from the draft. That's why we bring in the smart people like Mego onto the pod. All right, Mego.
Oh, stop it. Stop it.
Please.
Your flattery.
It'll get me everywhere with you. That and a really well-poured martini. So, all right, let's just get to this first. It hasn't actually been discussed very much on the frequency modulated version of WEEI this week because everyone's had socks on the brain because of spring training, Alex Bregman, Bregmania, and of course now the Devers and Cassis nonsense. I have no room for that right now and care to very little to discuss it further. I want to talk some football. And T. Higgins coming off the market, a guy that I think so many Pats fans had pinned their hopes to because it was such a shallow market in the first place. Like, he has to be the answer. This is going to be our true number one. He is going to be to Drake May what Steph Diggs was to Josh Allen, what so many other receivers have come to be to young developing quarterbacks. I was never as hype as everybody else, but I could understand why people were pinning their hopes and wants to him and what the desire was. But I think this could ultimately end up being the Patriots saving themselves $80 million guaranteed, not having to go through 5 for 160 and overpaying the man. He's good, but I don't know if he was ready to be that great for them. What did you think when you first heard the news?
So I believe, like, my understanding of the reporting is that Cincinnati wants to have a long-term extension with T. Higgins. So they're not just automatically slapping the non-exclusive franchise tag on him right now. They're trying to work something out. That's kind of a last resort. But it seems like they're intent on having him on the team next year, unless somebody comes to them with the 2 first-round draft picks that it would take to shake someone loose from the non-exclusive franchise tag.
That ain't happening. Just for the record, I would maybe.
It should.
I don't even know if would people do that for Jamar Chase, because Jamar Chase.
Yes.
I am HFO in my humble Foxboro opinion. Jamar Chase is the best receiver in the NFL, and I think I would probably do that for him.
I would do it for 2 receivers. I would do it for Jamar Chase. I would do it for Justin Jefferson. After that, it's a much longer conversation. Unfortunately, I wouldn't do it for T. Higgins. I really feel, I'm not trying to do a victory lap here. I feel that we've been trending this way over the last couple weeks, knowing that free agency is maybe not the best destination or the best place to find your receiver of the future for the Patriots, or even your receiver for the next 2 years. We've been talking about how important it is to look at the trade market, Fitzy. Like, I feel like our last 2 episodes, we've been saying you have to be aggressive in the trade market. It might be Debo. It might be Cooper Kupp. It might be DK Metcalf. Maybe you can get something with Devontae Adams going. Like, you need to lean on these maybe less obvious areas and maybe less perfect. T. Higgins wasn't perfect in himself. Like, he's missed time with his injuries, and he's really functioned as a number 2 with Jamar Chase on the other side of the field. So it's not as though he was a perfect fit either, to your point. But I think a lot of people looked at that as, wow, you won't even have to give up draft capital while you're rebuilding, and you get to hang on to that draft capital. None of this stuff is really going to work out perfectly for the Patriots that way.
No, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, T. Higgins broadcasts from WSTI, soft tissue injury radio, far too often for my liking. Hey, it just happens. Like, those guys that have those injuries that dog and nag them continue to persist and prevail. And I can't imagine that all of a sudden he's going to get paid the king's ransom that he's desired for years to come and go play somewhere where it's even colder than Cincinnati and give you 17 healthy and be able to go for, 1,510 touchdowns and 80 some odd catches. The things are going to happen. Like what past, the past success or past action is a great indicator of probably future endeavors for a guy like T. Higgins as well. Would I kick him out of bed for eating dry pizza crust or crackers, especially considering how bad the Pats receiver room is? Hell no. But the way that people were just like it's T. Higgins or we're going back another 5 years. There are plenty of options. And right now, the idea that you have in the receiver room what you have, and we'll get to some fresh audio from Steve Smith Sr., who ices up, or rather props up one of the Patriots' current young receivers as well as a possible solution. It's interesting and caught me off guard to say the least. But if you can go get Cooper Kupp for anywhere between a 4th and 7th round pick, I've heard 4, 5, 6, 7, depending on what another team is willing to pay to get that money off the books for the Rams, just do it. So what if he's 32? So what if he hasn't played a full healthy season in a while? It's a low risk, high ceiling investment for a team in desperate need of a giant outside target with sure hands who can, and this has been one of our consistent themes recently, Mego, and it bears revisiting again, be an adult in the room who can teach everyone else how to play the position at the highest level possible. And that's what I think people didn't see come out of the receivers in the last couple of years, the most possible. And now that's where Mike Vrabel and company and Josh McDaniels have to turn.
Absolutely. And I think, like, to round it out, that the way that I would tell people to think about this offseason in terms of receivers and just pass catchers in general is you're not just looking for home runs. You might not get a home run this offseason.
Let's get on
but
base. Just
you
get on
should,
base.
yeah, get a double. Like, hit a double at the risk
Yeah.
of mixing metaphors.
It's
Hit a
all good.
double. And right now, you're in such a desperate state with the weapons that you have and the support in general that you have around Drake May. Just try to improve in a meaningful way. It might not be DK Metcalf. It probably won't be T. Higgins. But Cooper Kupp is somebody that I think you could look at as a reliable upgrade. And that's what you're looking for across the field with where this team is right now.
Right. And listen, as far as what the Bengals are trying to do with T. Higgins as well, I applaud it. I think it's great because while this again it's a football podcast, but it's obviously Pat centric, hence the name that still probably won't be changing anytime soon. We're also you're a Commanders fan. I'm a general football fan. There is no methadone for NFL, especially during the offseason for me. I love watching the Bengals. I love when Joe Burrow is held. That offense might be my favorite one to watch in the NFL. So good for them. Keep the band together. Let's see how far you can go if you can bring back Trey Hendrickson, change over your defense, and keep T. Higgins and Jamar Chase together for possibly the most dynamic 1-2 punch in the NFL. Hell, look what he got out of Mike Gesicki last year. Joe Burrow, honest to God, walks on water that is flavored with cocoa and cinnamon, just like their chili, and is a damn near miracle worker. So good for them. Do your thing. I want to see the Patriots rebuild and make their own team, not salvage the parts of a bunch of other people to make a Franken team. Like, that's why patience needs be preached with this entire operation. So maybe go out and get Cooper Kupp. What do you think about, I know we've touched on it a little bit. There have been the reports that, the attitude got a little wonky last year. He's put on weight this offseason. But for a guy like Deebo Samuel, if the Patriots were able to probably, I don't know, do you think that would be maybe trading the Judon 3 or 4 to San Francisco? What could they do with him? And if he committed to football again, even after some nicks and dings, if you will, in San Francisco in recent years, a guy who calls himself a wide back because he's a running back and a receiver, don't you think if they had a committed, healthy-ish Deebo Samuel that he could thrive in a Josh McDaniels offense?
It's just kind of interesting to me how our conversations about these guys can really change in a year, because there was a report from Justina Anderson last year that there was the same kind of conversation around Deebo Samuel. And if I remember correctly, it was something that was very high on a lot of Patriots fans' lists, looking at that and going, yeah, bring Deebo over here. He's only 29 years old. There were reports that he was suffering from pneumonia last year, and that was part of
Mm,
the issue with his production. I'm not a doctor, so I can't really
yeah.
comment
Nor
further
have I
on that.
played one on television.
Right. But I would say with Debo is interesting in the article that you mentioned at the beginning of our pod.
Mhm.
I spoke with one of his wide receiver specialist coaches who's worked with him. And he was talking about how well he sees Debo potentially fitting in a Josh McDaniels system. And that, yeah, he has played because of what the 49ers have demanded from him. He's played that kind of wide back role, but he does have the skills to be a pure receiver as well. I've said that I like the idea of Josh McDaniels having Debo Samuel in his system because of the trickery that he likes to use and the versatility that Debo shows. Everybody just assumes completely that the tread is off.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I
Those
understand.
tires need to be recycled and
Yeah,
just and put in the scrapyard.
I understand. Like, people are hurt by the Juju Smith-Schuster experience. I
But
get it. I get
because it
it.
cost us, it was one of the worst decisions ever made. I had a
Right.
chance to. He wouldn't be mad about me saying this. I had talking out of turn. I had a chance to talk at length with Devin McCourty,
Mhm.
in a suite. Brag. Put it this way: just I saw him. He was making the rounds at the stadium. Came by. My kids get to meet him. He was such a dude during that Chargers debacle at the end of the year, and we chatted for a while. And he was so emphatic when he said, "I hated the Juju Smith-Schuster thing," and it
Yeah,
wasn't
because
because
it
he had
was
any because it cost. He said it wasn't anything against Juju, but it was because they let go one of their own who was a locker room leader, a beloved teammate, a solid, dependable guy, and someone who needed to stay on the Patriots long term. Like, what kind of example does it set when you don't reward one of your own who comes from here, rises all the way up to here, and wants to take his game here with you and is only asking for a fair payday? Truly one of the worst mistakes on the tail end of the Belichick dynastic run.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's kind of unanimous, probably outside of the locker room as well, the Jacoby Myers departure for bringing in Juju Smith-Schuster. But my point here is that there are a lot of extenuating circumstances around Debo's last season with the 49ers and the shift that they've made to other guys out there, be it, when he was healthy, Ayuk or Pearsall. I
Mm.
just think that it's not as simple as, is Debo washed or is Debo not washed? I think that there's still an opportunity there in talking to somebody who works with him, and I think that that's another interesting wrinkle. My preference, like, from just my opinion, is still Cooper Kupp if you're going to bring in somebody, because either of these guys, they're still not the complete answer for supporting Drake May in his development in the future.
Mhm.
It's just upgrading the room. And that's where I say, like, again, it doesn't have to be a home run. Just try to get on base, just try to hit a double. And I think one of these guys could be that.
Yep. What do you say, Pats fans? Losing out on T. Higgins, seeing him return to Cincinnati, likely on a franchise tag, potentially as part of a revamped future for Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Burrow said he's willing to rework his contract, taking a cue once again from a guy he can never have enough photo opportunities around. Tom Brady, good for him. He's likely not coming to Foxboro, so that means you're not going to have T. Higgins as the dream, if you will, on the outside. There goes that dream to some and many, but not maybe particularly us. Let us know who your dream or your hope for a number one wide receiver is for the Patriots in this wild 2025 offseason. She is at Megan_Ottolini. I'm your old pal, Nick Fitzy Stevens, at FitzyGFY here on Six Rings. Coming up here in the back half of the podcast, we're going to get into Mego's article that was just recently published at weei.com titled How Experts Believe Patriots Must Revamp at Wide Receiver, and revamp they need to. All right, Mego. So you had a chance to speak to a bunch of people. I'm almost kind of like, I'm almost a little like camera or gun shy here. Like, oh wow, a real reporter. Wow, somebody with journalistic integrity and standards on
Oh,
a
please.
podcast
Again, the
with this.
flattery, the flattery.
um, I think it's great. I want to get into. I think it's awesome that you made calls to and spoke with and interviewed people that have real access and opinions, valid opinions, and information on receivers or potential targets the Patriots could get in the draft, in the rest of the NFL, and on their own team. But I want to start here with this. Let's get a take from the audience as we record this live on the Fitzy GFY and WEEI socials on Wednesday. What is today? Today is Wednesday, the 19th of February,
It's
2025.
February 49th.
It feels like
The
it's
shortest month is truly the longest.
oh my God, especially with 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts and a
Yeah.
frozen face every time you walk outside, only to have your hand stick to your steering wheel. Good times in New England as always. All right, so I saw this morning and wanted to share it. I couldn't believe when I saw it, but listen, this guy's a potential Hall of Famer. He's been nominated a few times, may one day see himself in a yellow jacket and bronze bust in Canton. Here is Steve Smith Sr. saying, of all things, he believes Jalen Polk got done dirty last year and could actually be part of the solution, not the problems going forward in Foxboro.
Overall, it's just a tough situation for a young kid to be in.
I hope things turn around. I hope things change. I'm not putting it all on Jalen Polk for sure. I'm excited to see what type of staff comes in there. But
hey, you know what? I'm gonna be a helicopter receivers coach. It ain't his fault.
You're like Robin Williams in A Good Will Hunting, sitting there hugging Matt Damon in a therapy session. It's not your fault, Jalen. It's not your fault. But
it ain't.
I think it's cool that he gets a new staff, but.
Okay, so that was his podcast that he does with James Palmer for Underdog Fantasy. It's a blessing that there's new support staff for Jalen Polk. What happened to him last year is not his fault. And he actually says, he further explains that he likes his route running and legitimately thinks that he can pop this year, that he could go off and actually become an asset to Drake May. Does that, I mean, Steve Smith isn't getting paid by Jalen Polk's mama or his management. So were we being too harsh on him, or does he like basically one of the guys that just needs a fresh start?
Well, the sentiment about the coaching staff is something that I heard echoed from all the coaches who I spoke to, and these are wide receiver specialists who are not aligned with any particular franchise, but work with guys individually, from Amari Cooper to Deebo Samuel to any name that you want to throw out there, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker in your own backyard. And the sense was McDaniels coming back changes a lot for the receivers. Vrabel coming in, doing things the quote Patriot way, as we think about them with Bill Belichick, but from a player perspective, changes a lot about how everyone is looking at this offense. And I feel like that's something that we haven't talked a lot about, because I think our inclination being here in New England is, a retread. Oh, it's Josh McDaniels without Tom Brady.
It's member berries. We're playing the hits.
Yeah, there was that 1 year with Mac Jones, and then he went out and went to the Raiders, and it didn't work out there again. But I think that he does command a lot of respect from players around the league who are interested in learning his system and replicating and seeing where they can fit in with that. And so is it like Jalen Polk specific? I'm not sure, but it's something that I heard from confidently from coaches saying, this is a good move to kind of get back to competency for your offense.
So in your piece, how experts believe Patriots must revamp at wide receiver, an extensive read and a worthy read for Pats fans looking to satisfy their football thirst this offseason. You start with a section, Patriots have to get back to their type. So let's start there. I think I know what the Patriots type is and what worked in a McDaniels offense, though I will say I did find it interesting over the weekend to read from, God, there's so many places now, 33rd Team, 24/7 Sports, U Stadium, Sports Kita, all these other places that are not just your local news, SI, Bleacher Report, ESPN. But it was interesting. They had a piece saying that Josh McDaniels had spent the last year plus on a, quote, spiritual football journey.
Lord.
Well, I know. I mean, talk about just like nauseating contemporary.
Eat, pray, love.
Exactly. Eat, pray, catch. Exactly. Eat, throw, catch. So Josh McDaniels has this spiritual football journey. I don't know if that means he's going to revamp his offense. Like he'll play the hits of what used to work and adapt to the contemporary athlete and mobile quarterbacks and such. But as far as a Patriots type, yeah, I see like, Brandon LaFell played the X on the outside to a T perfectly in 2014 with a career year. The Dolas, the Edelmans, the small X's, the guys that got open, as Curran likes to say, in a phone booth, as I like to say, in an Italian sports car. Like, you can depend on them on a moment's notice when you've got 3rd and 7, or you have those gotta have it situations. They have, and the J.R. Redmond, Kevin Falk, Danny Woodhead, Shane Vereen, James White, all these things that they used to have, they've had none of their type for the longest time. Is that sort of what you're getting back to?
Yeah, that's definitely still the calling card of what the best of what the Patriots do at receiver is around the league, is that they understand, or at least within the Josh McDaniels system, I don't imagine that's something that they'd stray away from. The dependency of that little water bug type guy
Yes.
for third down. And maybe it's a slot. Maybe that's often what it has been. Maybe you find Pop Douglas in there. Maybe you take somebody like Debo and you're able to work him in there a little bit. Maybe it's somebody completely new that you get in the draft. One of the coaches that I talked to mentioned the name Xavier Restrepo from University of Miami, being
Yes.
somebody that he thinks has the potential to be the best slot receiver in this draft. So maybe it's going and adding someone like that. But the idea of, yes, the Patriots have a lot of needs in the receiver room, but this has kind of been the cornerstone of their type, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that still has a ton of value, even among the Justin Jeffersons, the Jamar Chases, the deep threat guys, when you have somebody with a big arm like Drake May.
Right. Good comment from Jim Freeman, currently watching live on Six Rings on Facebook. The discussion should be which was worse, the coaching or the receivers. If it's the coaching, which I think you and I, Steve Smith, and many others believe, Mego, editorial note in comment, they've been replaced. We really won't know about these wide receivers until the next preseason. That's possible. We don't know exactly what they could or should be. I'm not sure if Jalen Polk right now, sadly, has been trending towards the Patriots second round wide receiver bust Hall of Fame with the Chad Jacksons and the Taylor Prices and the Aaron Dobsons. But he'll get a look. Because they spent draft capital on him last year, and Elliott Wolf was a believer. He said that they thought they had a much better draft than the results prevailed. You know, I guess we'll see about that one as well.
What's difficult, I think, with that is a wide receiver. It's just not a developmental league. beyond mini camp and OTAs, you're
don't get much
expected
time.
to perform. And so I do think that, of course, there was so much disorganization in the wide receiver room last year, and a lot of that had to do with coaching. But I think there was also some issues with the approach that the receivers took to the overall process. And that's painting with a broad brush, but I think we saw it reflected on the field.
Also very funny. A number of commenters watching live right now are pointing out, as far as Josh's spiritual football journey, I hope he wasn't hanging out with Aaron Rodgers. I do not believe that any ayahuasca was consumed. I do not believe there was a darkness retreat, everybody.
But we
Thank
don't
God
know
we
for
can-
sure.
But we don't, cannot confirm as well. Yes, thank you once again. By the way, Pete the Animal Austin says the two big tight ends is the way to go. Now, Hunter Henry still is playing plus level football, like solid, dependable pro. We'll see if they bring back Hooper. But we had like Tom Curran joined us on the afternoon show. He's been a big proponent of this, and I've heard elsewhere as well, because this is a really good tight end draft. Maybe the Patriots need to get a difference maker. Like, I like the kid Gunnar Helm from Texas. He'll go in the second round. There's the kid from Penn State who could go top 10. And then you have Colton, was it Loveland? The kid Colston Loveland from Michigan. He's going to go top 20. If the Patriots were approached by somebody, Mego, saying like, we want to get up to 4 to get either Sanders or Ward, like they absolutely have to have that quarterback, would you get crazy and move back a little bit with that extra capital and draft another tight end early?
I don't know if I would immediately use that level of capital for tight end, because you have pressing needs, as we know, at the edge, on offensive line, at receiver. And so I don't know if like tight end would be the first place that I go, but I don't think it's illogical. And somebody that I talked to said one of the other things that they think Patriots pass catchers need overall is bigger bodies. You need a variety of body types that you're throwing out there, and especially a receiver that can block a little bit and can play. If they're going to play the X, like if they're going to play the X position, then they need to have a big body that they can get physical with. And it's something that they're just really lacking in the room that they have right now. So maybe that role goes towards a tight end a little bit.
It could be, or as you point out again, back to your article, You spoke with Steph Brown of Top Shelf Performance,
Yeah, and
who's
he's
a
awesome,
longtime
by
s
the
yeah,
way.
I think that is great. How you found him, Lord only knows. I know a lot of times people have their laughs with like, "Oh, you talked to the performance coach," or, "Oh, wow, you hooked up with Footwork King on IG," who's worked with so many people. He, like, tried to sell us on the Mohamed Sanu comeback. It didn't really go so well. I still think he got done dirty with the ankle injury he suffered in 2019 because he did have a great first game against the Ravens, but anyway, not to legislate the past, but to look to the future. So Steph Brown told you that Javon Baker could very well find his role. Give me a little bit more on that because, no one was a bigger fan of the draft pick. Nobody was more excited. I was told last year several times he was to be a diamond in the 2024 rough. And then he has a catch and doesn't play at all. So anything he does this year is found money, I think, to the franchise and to the coaching staff. But is there any belief that he could actually be a contributor this year?
So this was really interesting to me because Steph Brown and his brother TJ, who run Top Shelf Performance, they basically have been working with Javon Baker since he was an 8th grader. And Steph Brown told
Wow.
me Javon is like my little brother. So I feel that I can speak on what happened last year. And to paraphrase that, there was maturity. He's
Mhm.
got to mature into being a pro. And that was the issue last year. He said over and over, it is not Javon Baker's ability. Javon Baker might have the best ability in that room. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit. His ability is so high. He can be your number 2 receiver in that
Yes.
room. But he has to do what the Patriots are asking him to do. But that on the flip side, and the silver lining of this is that he's been talking to Javon since the Vrabel and then McDaniels news broke, and that his motivation, his enthusiasm is in the right place.
Mhm.
And again, paraphrasing to say, McDaniels is coming back. There's a new receivers coach in place, and I want to work. And he's trying to get to work the right way. Now, whether there's going to be space or the opportunity for him to prove that this year when he only had 12 receiving yards last year and only returned 3 kicks, kickoffs, I think that that's yet to be seen. And I think that it's going to be a shorter window for him to prove that
Right.
in OTAs, minicamp, and training camp. But it was really interesting to hear the perspective of somebody who knows him well, has known him since 8th grade, and say, what you have an issue with there is not his ability as a receiver. So if
Right.
you're talking about, like, to be crude, like bust potential, it's not about like he doesn't have the hands, he doesn't have the speed, he doesn't have the route running. It's the difference between being in the college game and being a pro, and whether he's going to click with what Vrabel and everybody else is demanding in the Patriot way now.
Right. I mean, look, the guy comes into the pros. People said he had first round wide receiver potential, but he falls to the 4th round because of character concerns and maturity issues. Played his way out of Alabama to the University of Central Florida, but his senior season led the NCAA with 22 yards per catch. I think he had 11 touchdowns on 53 receptions. So or 9 touchdowns. Like, he's a big play threat. And we saw glimpses of it. Like, he was cooking guys in practice last summer outside of Foxboro. Then, of course, there was the play that everybody wanted, the big rainbow connection when Drake casually flicked a 55-yarder to him and he dropped it down the seam. It's there, but whether or not it works out for him on the pro level is not going to be the opportunity. It's not going to be Drake. It's not going to be Josh. It's not going to be Vrabel. It 100% is on him. If he wants to make a career of it, if he wants to give it a go and see if he can actually go back to, live up to, and then surpass his potential, it's 100% on his effort. This is a classic case to me, Mego, from afar, and it seems like you've confirmed this, of you get back what you put in.
Mhm.
And if he can actually grow up a little bit, then maybe, just maybe, he'll be able to make something of it. Also, let's see, you in speaking to a bunch of the guys that you talked to here, you said New England should also consider bigger receivers in the draft, and also one of the prevailing thoughts was the league overvalues speed.
Yeah, the speed thing was something that came up time and time again with these guys, with these wide receiver specialists, which is when you're looking to the draft and you're trying to figure out what talent works for you. And Fitzy, I'm sure that there's somebody from the front office whose quote will jump out to you from the past couple of years immediately with
Mhm.
this. about you want to get faster,
No.
get fast, guys.
If you want to get faster, you draft fast guys. If you want to get tall, you draft tall guys. New England's going to be a place to play if you love football, baby.
Yeah, so there's kind of this irritation or annoyance about the preoccupation with particularly the 40-yard dash, but speed altogether. Feeling like there's maybe not a full understanding of the position from people looking to evaluate it, that the 40-yard dash is not the end all be all, but it's treated that way at the combine. It's treated that way by talent evaluators
It's unbelievable how overvalued it is.
To the point that guys who are getting ready to test at the combine are stressing themselves out, losing weight over it. And this idea that you need to look at these guys not only as fully well-rounded football players, what they can do in route running, what they can do with their hands, how they play in different environments, but also how they can handle a playbook and how they can handle the workload and how they can handle, as we were just talking about, growing into a system, understanding what your coaches are demanding from you, this whole top to bottom makeup, and not just trying to go out and replicate a Tyreek Hill here, a Tyreek Hill there, because we know that Tyreek Hill is one of one, but he's not the only person who's been a great wide receiver in the NFL over the past 10 years. This is an area on the field that is so incredibly valuable right now that T. Higgins, if he were to hit the free market, would be getting 30 million plus this year. And that's why he's probably going to be looking for that in his deal with Cincinnati. And so how do you go out and find somebody like that in the draft? You really have to take a more comprehensive look overall and not just looking at the speed testing.
One of the guys that was mentioned in your piece, Jaden Higgins, 6'4", 215 pounds from Iowa State. Okay. I'd gladly entertain that as well. I think the Patriots, I think targeting a receiver in the first 10 picks, like let's say they stay at 4. Everybody's obsessing now with Tet McMillan because he might be the first receiver to go. He's a big guy, can make one-handed catches. Some have said he's Megatron-esque. Others are concerned that he could be bust adjacent. And I think there's a massive gun-shy syndrome in Pat's Nation because of what happened with N'Keal Harry as well. So he'll be one of the more polarizing figures. I think, look, we still have 2 months to debate this, but I think you just have to, you got to go safe up top. You got a tackle or a pass rusher or defensive lineman who's going to be a 5 to 12 year trench warfare piece that you can just sort of like set and forget, rotisserie oven style along the line where the game is won, as the Philadelphia Eagles just showed us. And then between the trade market, between the guys you have in-house, and then maybe some of these flyers later on, or maybe not flyers, but just well-heeled receivers that are going to be value picks in the second and third round. That's where you need to go. My favorite receiver thus far in the draft, Matthew Golden, the kid from Texas. I think he can do it all. People love how do you pronounce his name? From Ohio State, Emmanuel or Ezekiel Ibugia.
Good luck with that, man.
Yeah, okay. How about the Zeke kid from Ohio State? There are those like scouted on Twitter who say like kid's going to come in and be a plug and play pro. And Ohio State has been a wide receiver factory the last couple of years as well. So, yeah, it's fascinating. Guys, give this piece a read. It's at weei.com. Mego spoke to who are the people that provided these excellent opinions and insight for you?
So I talked to David Robinson. I talked to Steph Brown, who we just spoke about, and I spoke with Sly Johnson. And they all work with pros across the league. So we're not just talking like, oh, they just work with the Patriots or they just work with one or two guys. Some of these guys have a roster of 30 plus 60, wide receivers who they worked with in college and then up through the pros. And still, when you see, like the workouts that guys are doing that they're putting on Instagram in April and leading up to OTAs to try to show off all their workouts, like these are their specialists.
Excellent. Make sure you guys check out all of Mego's work at weei.com and here, obviously, on Six Rings and on the dial on the weekends and beyond at Megan_Ottolini. Give that piece a read. It's really good. And thank you guys for tuning in once again to this wide receiver centric off-season Six Rings and Football Things podcast. We will have so many free combine, free agency, draft pods to come. You guys are going to be as prepped as ever for March 10th when legal tampering begins and free agency flows freely thereafter. And hopefully the Patriots are burning some cash. And then the
Ooh.
draft in the end of April as well. Plus, Mego, a quick moment to plug an event that we're both going to be involved in on Friday night, March 7th. Make sure you guys bookmark this. It's going to be a blast for a great cause. From 7:30 to 10 p.m., myself, Doug Kyde, and Andrew Callahan from the Boston Herald are going to be hosting our pre-agency super chat. It's basically a Patriot-centric online streaming party. Bring your beverage of choice, if you will. Our friends over at Vitamin C are one of our sponsors for the night's events. Everything that we raise that night is going to be for LLS, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, to help out Doug Kyde and anyone else in memory of his daughter, Hallie, who passed last year from leukemia, and to prevent what happened to the Kyde family, hopefully from ever happening to another family. We're just going to talk free agency and Patriots football for a little over 2.5 hours on a fun Friday night hang. Mego, you're going to be joining us. We have 15-minute interview slots. Mego, Bill Barnwell, Tom Curran, Field Yates is going to be joining us. Players, analysts, draft wonks, and more. It's going to be an absolute blast. All of the money going to LLS as well. So make sure you bookmark that Friday night, March 7th, 7:30 to 10 p.m. Mego, because you joined early on, you're going to get one of the top slots. What are you thinking?
Ooh. What am I thinking?
What's your witching hour? Like, are you an 8:30? You want to go? You want to go nice and early? Do you want to hit lead off? Do you want to let a few other people blaze the trail?
I think I can hit lead off. I can do that. I think I can be the debut. You know, then I
Wow.
don't have to follow up anybody else's performance.
Right. If someone else comes on and crushes, and you're like, "Oh man, I already made my first martini, and then I drank it nervously, watching someone else be funny." Like, "Oh crap! Now what am I gonna do?" I can't wait. I'm super excited that you could join us. It's going to be a really fun time. And again, all the money that we make to help out at LLS is going to be terrific. So make sure you guys bookmark that as well. It'll be available here on my socials. We'll stream it through EEI and across everyone else's Twitter feed. So, or X platform, whatever you want to call it. Mego, have a great day. Thanks so much. We will talk to you guys soon. Appreciate you guys tuning in to Six Rings of Football Things, wherever you listen to it, Spotify, Apple Pods, Odyssey, and beyond. We'll have fresh Patriots content for you soon. But until then, good day, God bless, and as always,